People who the thing about this knowledge function of attitudes is that people who have different attitudes about things, who have opposite attitudes about things, can witness the same event, but interpret it very differently. Because remember, one of the functions of attitudes is it helps us interpret events that happen. It helps us sort of react without having to put too much, extra thought into something. So let's say that you're at a football game and one team wins and one team loses, okay? Based on what your attitude is about Team A, let's say Team A wins and Team B loses. Let's say based on what your attitude about Team A is, you might say, we won, those refs were on it. They were calling everything correctly. They were being really fair. I really love those referees in that game. Okay? But then let's say you have a more positive attitude about Team B. But Team B lost. So you might say, those refs were unfair. They were calling things wrong. They just were out to get us, okay? Well, you both saw the same game, okay? But because your attitudes about each team was opposite, you interpreted the game differently. I already talked about expressing values and how the value function of attitudes helps people express their deeply held values and their deeply held convictions. Attitudes also help us protect our self-esteem. So we call this the ego defensive function of attitudes, helping people express or protect their self-esteem. So let's say I ask a group of students, how do you feel about homosexuals? Okay, some of them might say, I really don't feel kind of neutral about homosexuals. Some might say I love homosexuals. Some might say I have a negative feeling towards homosexuals. Not only do I have a negative feeling about homosexuals, I think that they need to live right. They need to live like I'm living. I'm living a good life. Homosexuals are negative because they need to live like me. They need to live the way I'm living, okay? And so people who kind of go that route with their attitude, what we know is that, okay, they're trying to protect, they're trying to build themselves up. They're trying to make themselves, feel better. They have that particular attitude about homosexuals because it makes them feel better about themselves, okay? The fourth function of some attitudes is to maximize rewards. We call this the utilitarian function of attitudes, and it illustrates how attitudes help people to maximize their rewards and minimize their punishments. Okay, let me give you an example. I'll go back to the education when I said I have a positive value about education, and the reason I have a positive attitude about education is because having a college education means that I earn more money when I go out and get a job. Okay. It means that maybe I don't have to I don't have to go out and get a job where I have to use a lot of physical labor. I can just sit in a nice office and I can earn money, okay? I can maximize my rewards, earn more money, and minimize the punishments. I don't have to do physical labor. I can sit in a nice cushy office. So you see how sometimes people have certain attitudes about things because they figure, hey, if I have this particular attitude about this, then that means that I'll get something out of it, or I won't have to do something I don't like, okay? And then number 5, the fifth one, matching social situations, we call this the social adjustive function of attitudes. And it occurs when attitudes help people match the social situation by having attitudes that will impress others favorably. So again, I kind of hit on this a little bit, but let's say that you're at a party, with a bunch of rich business owners, Republicans who voted for John McCain, okay? They don't like Barack Obama. And let's say you're there for some reason, and let's say that you really want to fit in with these people, and they ask you, what do you think about Barack Obama? And you say, oh, I think he's doing an awful job. I think McCain should have won. You say your attitude about Barack Obama is negative, and your attitude about John McCain is positive, okay? And you're saying that because that's what will help you fit into the situation, okay? That's what you think you're supposed to believe. And so you go ahead and you convince yourself that you believe it because you want to fit in so much. People who want others to think of them positively base their attitudes on this particular function, okay? On the other hand, people who don't care what other people think about them, who just say, I'm going to come up with my own attitudes no matter if other people agree with me or not, they're more likely to form their attitudes based on that value expressive function that I talked about earlier. They're not worried about what other people think or what what attitude am I supposed to have. They're digging deep inside themselves and saying, okay, what are my values? I'm going to base my attitudes on my values. So let's kind of put these functions into perspective. Let's link them up to the other things that we've been talking about this semester so far. So some of the functions, you might have already picked up on this, have to do with, remember, being right versus being liked. So remember we talked about that earlier, social psychology, some of the stuff is tied into, on one hand, some people want to be right, they want to have all the correct information and come up with the right conclusion about things. On the other hand, people also want to fit in and want people to like them and want, to be in the popular crowd and that kind of thing. So if you think about the 5 different functions, which ones are about being right and which ones are about being liked? So the knowledge function, the value expressive function, those are about being right. Okay, they're about wanting to know, the first one, knowledge function, we're wanting to get all the information before deciding what your attitude is. And then the value expressive function, remember, basing it on your values, whether or not other people agree or not. So those 2 functions are about being right. On the other hand, we have being liked. So what functions would fit into that? The ego defensive function, the utilitarian function, the social adjustive function. Okay, those are about being liked, feeling good about yourself, fitting in. Okay, so remember, ego defensive function. It's about protecting my self-esteem. Okay, I want to feel good about me, whether or not my attitude is right. As long as I feel good about me, then that's what's important. And utilitarian, I want to get the most reward that I can and get the least punishment that I can. And then obviously social adjustive function is all about being liked, because it's about having the attitude that you think is the most popular at the time. Okay, so knowing a person's primary function, attitude function, so what I'm saying is knowing which of these 5 functions a person bases their attitudes on, because I think each of us, if we think about it, will agree that most of our attitudes comes out of one of these 5 functions. And knowing what a person's primary attitude function is, you can kind of determine their reason for participating in certain behaviors. You can almost say, okay, well, that makes sense that they did that because it fits with their primary attitude function. So let me give you an example. So most of you guys probably believe, have an attitude that's positive about education. If I were to ask you what's your attitude about education, you'd probably say, and I said, is it positive or negative? You'd probably say it's positive. I have a positive attitude about education. Good, okay. But if I dug a little deeper and tried to figure out why you have a positive attitude about education, that's where some differences might come in. So some students, maybe they formed that particular, they have that particular attitude, positive attitude about education, because it serves a knowledge function for them. Let's say that they think going to college is good because they want to learn all they can. They want to know what they didn't know before. They want to go to college because they appreciate the idea of education and learning and things like that. So they have that particular attitude because of a knowledge function. It helps them interpret the world around them. Okay, but other people might say, I think education is a positive thing. Because I think that I value having the opportunity to have new experiences and learn and things like that. So in that case, the positive attitude about education would be based on the person's deep values. Okay. Other students might say, I have a positive attitude about college because it's going to help me make more money in the future. Okay, and it's like the example I gave earlier. All right, so those people, it's not about knowledge, it's not about some value they have about education. It's about, I want to maximize the amount of money that I'm going to earn. I want to get something out of it for me, reward wise. So those people would have a utilitarian function. Okay, that their attitude serves a utilitarian function. How about the ego defensive function? I know people like this who say, I think education is a positive thing because if you get a college education that makes you better, than somebody who doesn't have a college education, okay? So it makes them feel good about themselves to say, I have a college education. College education is good, and so I must be better than other people because I have it. They have a positive attitude about education because it makes them feel good about themselves.